Hello, everyone, and welcome to Choices, Books, and Gifts, where you always have choices. Today, we have a wonderful guest. Her name is Carol Graham. And what I'm going to start with is I'm going to read her bio for us. Okay. Born in Texas, Carol Graham currently lives and works as a realtor in New York City in the Hudson Valley area. Before moving to Brooklyn, she did a variety of work in the ski business as a bartender, a massage therapist, a driver for hang gliding pilots, a photographer, and once even worked in a bullet factory. Her love for all things Brooklyn began the day she moved to the city from New Mexico more than 20 years ago, and has only grown as she has gotten to know and appreciate the neighborhoods and the people who live there. Carol is also a member of the Woodstock Writers Group and a two-time winner of the Woodstock Book Fest Story Slam, and is the author behind the series Brooklyn Murder Mysteries. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Jay.
Thank you so much. So, I like to jump right into it. So, my first question is, can you tell us about Brooklyn Murder Mysteries? What prompted you to write this book and this series?
Well, it's a series. It's this is my book, Passion in Park Slope, is the first in a series.
Can I? Oh, beautiful. Thank you.
Um, and I've sort of been a writer for about 30 years, in and out of all those various positions that you just named.
You wore a
Uh,
lot of hats.
I
You wore
did.
a lot of hats.
Yeah. But this particular series came about because actually I didn't know anything about it's a particular brand of murder mystery called a cozy murder mystery. And
Okay.
a cozy J is it's 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 where it's an amateur sleuth like Miss Marple. An amateur sleuth in generally a small town, not a professional detective at all, but who solves a murder that she comes into contact with. Usually, there's no blatant sex or violence going on the page. You have that happening off screen, so to speak, and usually justice is served at the end. You know, a happily ever after. And I didn't read books like that for many years. My sister read them, and I gave her quite a hard time about that because I read literature. But she read these and turned me on to the genre, and I finally got engaged. And I've read many of them now, and I decided I wanted to write a series. And I picked Brooklyn because I love it so much there. And to me, each of those little all the neighborhoods are like little small towns. So that's where.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you for that. So, what brings us some interest here in choices is that the protagonist seems to be in recovery. What made you decide to do that? Are you well?
Well, well, most people know someone who's in recovery.
Absolutely.
I don't know anyone really who hasn't had addiction, for one thing, touch their lives, and hopefully recovery come into their world
Yep.
in some way or another. And it's no respecter of persons, addiction. And so all walks of life, I think, are affected by that. And most people know somebody in their world who deals with recovery. I think that's been my experience. It's also I chose to put the protagonist in that same position because um, I think it offers a substantial and interesting filter to look through the world at. Through which to look at the world. Let me say it right. My mother, the English teacher, would have rolled over that one. But it matters in this particular book because the protagonist is just in the regular world. She's a realtor in Brooklyn, and she is in recovery, and so she looks at all of her choices through that filter too. And I think that I wanted to show that because I think a lot of people look through the world with that filter if they're lucky.
So in the book, do we delve into the recovery part? Like, does she go to meetings, or does she do this? Does she do that?
Well, she does. but we don't sit through, in this book, we don't sit through any meetings with her. But
Okay.
it is talked about. In fact, in the beginning, it talks about why she got sober to begin with. She is
Perfect.
a recovering alcoholic, this protagonist. Her name is Kara. And
Okay.
it talks about why she got sober and how that worked for her. So it leads us into that. But no, Jay, we don't sit through meetings. One of the things that I've noticed in stories and TV and movies and stuff, I was never really satisfied with the way recovery got shown in some way or another. For the most part, I was never it never seemed quite right or something to me. It didn't satisfy me. Except, wait a minute, I did have some great inspiration with a television program called Elementary, with Johnny Lee Miller and Lucy Liu playing a modern day Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson. And I got to tell you, I fell in love with it. In love with it.
Yeah.
Because he's quirky, and I mean, not that we didn't know Sherlock Holmes was quirky, but he's quirky in a very lovely and smart and interesting way. And so anyway, I wanted to show somebody in recovery like that. Um, and seeing somebody in recovery, Jay, that makes decisions based on their spiritual life, not religious. It's not a religious thing that she's involved in at all, but
Absolutely.
basing her decisions and the way she looks at the world through that spiritual lens, I think is interesting.
Hmm. Hmm. So, like, for instance, are you saying that in a particular situation where one would, a regular detective may do something different from her because she's in recovery? Do you have any kind of example of how she would handle it as opposed to, someone not in the program?
Well, a couple of things come to mind when this protagonist Kara Gerard is going through the world, and she's involved in she discovers the murder first of all. So she is involved, even though she would not normally be involved in a murder investigation. She's involved because she saw that, and she thinks, it involves people in the real estate world, and so she feels like she's involved anyway. And
Okay.
it's not it's just her being interested and aghast. But the way she chooses to look at it is through dealing. She's very direct, and she's just calls people up and talks to them. um, she uh, she also doesn't go around telling other people's secrets. She listens. She's a good listener, and I think that came from her time in recovery. She became a good listener, and from sitting through a lot of meetings where she listened to people who had problems, and who had flaws that they were discussing. So the listening part of it, I think, is definitely a direct result of her role in recovery. And then at the end, I don't want to give anything away because I want your viewers to buy this book and enjoy it. I hope they get a kick out of it. But in the end, she deals with the murder in a particular way, I think. Um, sort of, she's involved with the discussion of it in a way that I think is a direct correlation to her recovery. I know that's a bit vague, but it's a murder mystery. I can't give
Well,
it
it
away.
needs to be vague. It needs to be vague because people need to buy the book. And you reminded me of two things. First, I've always agreed with you as well. Program AA, all these other individual programs have not been well represented, but there is one that I got a kick of because I thought it was really real, and it was a series called Mom. And I thought they did AA absolutely wonderfully. They would have meetings, they would, show you what life is in and outside of the program, and they really did a good job. So, someone in Alcoholics Anonymous or any other kind of 12-step program, really, or just looking to better their lives, would they have a lot to relate to this person in the book? Would someone in recovery find it, calling their name? Would it be more like,
Well, yeah, Jay, I hope so. That was it was twofold, my giving her that background. It was so that other people in recovery would relate to it and hopefully enjoy her way of looking at the world. But it was also for people who are not in recovery, who don't have that vision, that lens to look through the world, that I thought maybe it would ring true for them some way, and maybe they would understand recovery a little bit better because of that. So it's sort of either way. This was not written just for people in recovery or for people not in recovery.
Right.
It just sort of it evolved the way life sometimes does.
Yes, and that's what I think recovery is all about. It's a bridge back to reality, but you have life, and you have when you're in a recovery program as well. So, what is something you'd like to leave us with about about the book? So, why should we buy that book? Can you tell me?
Oh gosh, the thing about cozy mysteries that I was talking about before is that Jay, with so much stress in the world and so much disagreement and polarity, I think that this book, this genre, for one thing, in a big way, but this book, it's just fun. If there's such a thing as a feel good murder mystery, I hope this is it. Um, but I wanted people just to get a kick out of something, a little bit of entertainment and a way to relax. And I think that reading is the thing that's brought me joy my whole life. And my son and my grandchildren read beyond words. And I think getting away from the screens just a little bit and having a story told up here, well, on a page so that you can envision it here, is what I was going for. And the fact that it brings a recovery filter to it is a very pleasant thing for me personally.
I love that. And I agree with you completely. Not enough people in the world read. And, I love to read as well. And I just wanted to point out this is a series, correct? Is there 3 so far
No, this is the first in the series, and I'm working on the second, Jay.
Okay.
It takes place in Windsor Terrace in Brooklyn, which is the adjacent neighborhood to Park Slope, and one that I lived in for many years myself. Despite this twang, I have been in New York for over 21 years, and I love Brooklyn so much. But it's the first. This is a first in the series, and I hope it's many neighborhoods that unfold for us. But we'll see. I'm kind of old. We'll see how many I get through.
I don't think you're that old at all. And I wish you all the luck in the world. I hope you make at least 20 of these and they're very successful. And
Jay, thank you so much. I have these available. I hope that they will someday be available in your store, but they're available at it's on my website at www.brooklynmurdermysteries.com. They're available at a lot of independent bookstores and, of course, at Amazon. So if I might give myself a plug, thank you very much.
you most certainly can. And that was a wonderful plug. I want to thank you again for being here. And I'm just going to close with thank you, everyone, for joining us at Choices Books and Gifts, where you always have choices. May God bless you and look after you always. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Jay.